it's at this point we have this book 9, where often called the embassy to Achilles. The Greeks are, because the Greeks are desperate, they really want to have Achilles return. And again, Agamemnon decides, okay, well, I'll give back Briseis, the war prize, as well as give Achilles other gifts. And he organizes this embassy of 3 heroes, Ajax, Phoenix, or Phoenix is another pronunciation I've heard, and Odysseus, and for all 3 of them to go to offer these gifts from Agamemnon. Note, Agamemnon doesn't go himself and doesn't go and say, sorry, I was bit prideful there, obviously, let's not let this get between us. We have a larger purpose. I give you all these things. Please forgive me. Let's try to work together, whatever that speech entails. He doesn't go, he sends these 3 heroes instead to extend the offer. When they arrive at Achilles' tent, Achilles, they find he's playing the lyre and singing Kleos, so the glories of man. So he's portrayed as, remember, kleos is glory, and what you're seeking are this kleos that people will sing and talk about you afterwards. So the kleos is in the form of poets singing about you, others talking about you, those kinds of things. So Achilles, instead of becoming the subject matter of these poems and songs written about great heroes, becomes the poet, so to speak. And one thing that's, I don't know if it's studied well enough, but I find interesting every time I read the Iliad is this, and the Odyssey, is this notion of the role of the poet. That's kind of subtly in the background. So we see it here, Achilles as hero, when he's, let's say, not hero in action, can also be heroic as singer of action. So poet and warrior as kind of 2 poles, but two kind of sides of a same coin. Also, what we'll see in book 18 is the whole depiction of Hephaestus creating this shield for Achilles. He creates this whole cosmos on this shield, and describes all of history. And really, what's happening there, we'll see, is a depiction of the poet's art in painting a world, or describing a world, so to speak, and the movement and action within a world. So too here we have this figure for poetry, Achilles stepping in for that. And Achilles greets his friends cordially and offers them a meal. Now, a keynote here, Achilles needs to learn and is suffering, let's say, from a short-sightedness at the beginning of the Iliad, because he's, let's say, overly attached to his war prize. But in every respect, we can see Achilles as a great hero. In this, whereas Agamemnon does not come off to the same extent as a great hero. So Achilles here offers the friends a meal, which is in keeping with the standards of xenia. Now, I've mentioned that in a previous lecture, which is the whole cultural makeup for the Greeks around the guest-host relationship, okay? So the expectations, the important cultural emphasis that the Greeks put on the fact that one had to be so generous to strangers or friends that visited, and provide gifts, meal, etc. to these guests. And again, of course, the expectations of the guest to the host as well. Achilles does this. He remembers Xenia. Agamemnon, on the other hand, had to be reminded by Nestor in the same book, book 9, earlier in book 9, he had to be reminded by Nestor that they were having this mini council with other generals, and Nestor said, oh, maybe you should get some food out, right? You've got guests. So Odysseus's appeal. So I won't go through these speeches, but I won't go through the text of the speeches, but I'll just refer to them. So Odysseus's appeal is to honor, and he points out the Greeks' distress and that all the honors Achilles can gain from Agamemnon by returning to battle. And a Phoenix's appeal is to a sense of family. So Phoenix has been this old friend of the family, and he calls on him to remember these old times when Phoenix was holding him as a baby, and Achilles even spat up on him when he was a baby, and he wants him to look back at all these times of his attachment to family and family expectations. And then Ajax's appeal is to Achilles as a fellow warrior, as a comrade, and saying, we really need you, buddy, out there. Things are getting tight. It would really be helpful if you were right beside me. So Achilles rejects them, and in rejecting Odysseus's appeal to honor, etc., in a way he's rejecting the whole heroic ideal. He's placing long life above honor, and he's, in a way, he's saying that he's willing to fight for glory, but he says there's no reason to fight if the prizes of honor are taken away by Agamemnon. That's one way of looking at it. But in another way of looking at it, looks like the speech is kind of saying, I don't even want to fight for glory and honor at all, because none of those are as important as long life. And he goes in, I won't go to this speech, but in lines 497 to 504, he refers to, and I highly recommend you go and look at those lines, the two fates that his mother Thetis, who is a goddess and who knows these things, the two fates that his mother Thetis told him awaited him. One would be, if you stay in Troy, you'll achieve great honor, great glory, but your life will be short. If you go home, you will have no glory, but you will live a long life. And in his response to the embassy, he's basically saying, well, a lot of prizes and stuff like that, none of that's worth anything if I'm dead. So I would say I need to take life over wealth and honor. So it seems he's rejecting the heroic ideal in this embassy. So the embassy points to a couple things, because it points very sharply to this choice that's in front of everyone, especially in front of these warriors who are facing life and death, but in front of all of us as we kind of go through our lives, it kind of points to the human condition and the meaning we make of our lives in the face of mortality. Okay, so the Iliad's often referred to as the poem of death, and I would say it's not just because a lot of people die in it, that's for sure. So there's poem of death because it portrays a lot of death, but also because the meaning of mortality is explored so fundamentally in the poem. And you could say the resolution of the whole poem turns on Achilles' final acceptance of the human condition, including death. So including the death of his loved Patroclus and the fact that he will die, and that there's not much there's not much to compensate one for that, the fact that they're going to die. You can tell oneself, in this Greek worldview, you can tell yourself, okay, well, maybe people will remember me afterwards, but it's small comfort when someone thinks about it profoundly, as Achilles does. This is going to, okay, so so he talks about, in his description of his two possible fates, Achilles links kleos with this adjective aptheton, meaning imperishable. And this imperishable glory is what, the heroic warrior ultimately fights for, and what is bestowed by the epic poetry itself. But there's a certain paradox to this imperishable glory, like this glory that will live on, because you can only get this kind of immortality, this living on, by either losing one's own life or taking life, right? So there's this paradox is at work. And this is kind of nicely captured in the words of Sarpedon later in the book, book 12, his words to his comrade Glaucus on the paradox of glory. Ah, my friend, if you and I could escape this fray and live forever, never a trace of age, immortal, I would never fight on the front lines again, or command you to the field where men win fame. But now, as it is, the fates of death await us. Thousands poised to strike, and not a man alive can flee them or escape. So in we go for attack. Give our enemy glory or win it for ourselves. That's kind of sums up quite succinctly the fundamental decision. There's really no other choice. You know, you got to go into battle. That you have to do that. And what is going to happen is you're going to be victorious and win glory for oneself, or you're going to be the source of that glory for the enemy. So I think I mentioned this briefly in an earlier lecture, but part of what's going on here is this notion of, let's say, in terms of glory and mortality is the notion of what happens after death for the ancient Greek. And for the Greeks, the psyche, the soul or mind, leaves the body and goes to the underworld. It's not the equivalent of Christian hell or anything like that. It's definitely not heaven, but it's this kind of vague, unsubstantial existence. So Achilles, for instance, in the Iliad, book 23, he sees a ghost of Patroclus, his friend who's about to die, who in book 16 you've already read. His friend Patroclus, he sees this ghost and he says, ah, God, so even in death's strong house there is something left, a ghost, a phantom true, but no real breath of life. So it's an insubstantial existence. It's this phantom-like existence without in order to discourse with these ghosts, Odysseus, when he descends to the underworld in the Odyssey, has to give this sacrifice of blood, and it's only after they've drank this blood can they actually think and talk, these ghosts. Other than that, they're kind of floating around without a real kind of conscious presence and without the ability to speak. So it's not all that to say, it's not a view of the afterlife that's designed to spark a lot of well, I'm going to die, so that's okay, things will be better, and this is not an important passage, as opposed to, let's say, other worldly religions. So Christianity being a prevalent one, where the afterlife is presented favorably to this life. So as I mentioned as well previously, when we were talking about Odysseus meets Achilles in the underworld, and Achilles says in the Odyssey, when Odysseus sees Achilles, right? Because remember, in the Iliad, we still have Achilles alive. Achilles is going to kill Hector in the Iliad. And then after the Iliad, in other stories that are not available to us, Achilles is going to be killed by Paris, okay? The Odyssey takes place after the fall of Troy, so after that's taken place. The Odyssey depicts Odysseus on his way home. On his way home, he has to visit the underworld in order to get some guidance on how to get back. He sees Achilles, who had died earlier, in the underworld, and he has a little chat with him, and says, boy, you must, Odysseus says, oh, wow, Achilles, good to see you. You must really love it. Existence must be great for you because you were always the best. You were the best at everything. And the Achilles is not happy. He's saying, don't give me this, don't give me that BS, basically. And this is the speech he says, no winning words, no, none of that crap, right? No winning words about death to me, shining Odysseus. By God, I'd rather slave on earth for another man, some dirt poor tenant farmer who scrapes to keep alive, than rule down here for the breathless dead. So then rule down here over all the breathless dead. So Achilles says, I'd rather still be alive. I'd rather be the worst condition possible. then be the king of the underworld. So Plato, and I think it was Taylor at the beginning of this lecture mentioned the kind of the parallels to Plato's Republic, and here's one. So in Plato's Republic, Socrates questions the poetic depiction of the underworld. So they're trying to, in the Republic, they're trying to think of what would be an ideal way, let's say, to construct a city-state, a community. And they say, well, we have to really think about how we educate the rulers, and well, everyone, but most in particular the rulers. And right now, as I remember, I said, Homer was kind of their educator. All kids read Homer and knew Homer. So Homer was their model, their ideal, their educator. And Plato's saying, is it good that the kids are modeling themselves on Homer? And that depiction of what life's all about, and he takes this quote from the Odyssey of Achilles saying that he'd rather be a landless serf than ruler of the underworld. And Socrates says, I don't know, if we use that, then people will not want to die for their community, maybe. So that's one example of, let's say, questioning the value system before them that the philosophers did, and questioning the Homeric value system. But within the Homeric value system, glory after death is the only real enduring existence one can hope for.